Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
It's my favorite time of the year, T-Bone. It's the offseason. The general manager meetings are taking place right now out in Las Vegas. Welcome into the Redbird Report. We got a lot to get into today. We began with Brendan Donovan, who was apparently the talk of the GM meetings. Why? Because every team in Major League Baseball is interested in him, and what's there not to like? The guy is a great human being. He can play anywhere on the diamond. He gets on base as well as just about anybody in the sport. He doesn't strike out. You can bat him 1, 2, 5, or 6 in a championship contenders lineup if you wanted to. And, oh, by the way, he brings all like these leadership capabilities as well. He is the perfect way to start an offseason. Because if you add Brendan Donovan, you have ultimate flexibility. Now you can go to the market if you're one of these teams and say, all right, well, we need a second baseman and an outfielder by the end of the offseason. You can just wait, see how the market develops, and then take the best bang for your buck bargain bin value deal at either second or outfield, and then Brendan Donovan takes the spot that you didn't fill via free agency. So in Derek Gould's story earlier today on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, he said, few, if any, players have generated as much interest from teams as Brendan Donovan. One source described how more than half of the teams in the majors would like to try to trade for him and joked how there should be, quote, 22 or more, end quote, calling the Cardinals. He specifically connected the Royals, the Yankees, the Guardians, and the Dodgers as teams that are interested in Brendan Donovan. That's quite a cross-section of Major League Baseball teams. You've got the Yankees and the Dodgers on one side, Royals and the Guardians on the other. So if you're a big spender, you like him because he's cheap and cost-controlled. If you're a smaller market, you like him because he's cheap and cost-controlled. So no matter your market size, no matter what you're looking for, Brendan Donovan fits. It's not a surprise that he's in demand. We knew this. It's why we said he's probably going to be a trade chip that ends up getting moved this offseason. What I find to be interesting about this, T-Bone, because we've spent a ton of time talking about Brendan Donovan as somebody that could be moved from the Cardinals. Why it makes sense? His age, plus only 2 years of cost control remaining for him. Why else it makes sense? You have J.J. Weatherholt coming through your system. You've got Nolan Gorman already. You've got Thomas J.C. You've got Mason Wynn. You've got so many infielders, middle infielders especially. You have internal replacements for Donnie that are younger and cheaper and could give you 70% of what he brings to the table offensively. So it sucks. Brendan Donovan's my favorite player, but it's the smart move baseball-wise to trade him this offseason. Let's get to the next part of that conversation, though. What do you trade him for? Because that, to me, is ultimately what's going to make this deal. Everybody wants him, but different teams have different things to offer you. Some teams may have, major league caliber position players that they're willing to offer. Others may have major league caliber pitching that they're willing to offer. Maybe some have close to major league level pitching, but it's more like your mid to back into the rotation starters. And then other teams have lower level pitchers that they're willing to offer you with big time upside, swing and miss stuff, all of the things that you're looking for. But there's risk involved with those pitchers because they may never see the big leagues, much less become competent major league starters. So if you're in Chaim Bloom's shoes, T-Bone, what are you looking to move Brendan Donovan for? What are you seeking in this kind of a trade?
Yeah, I think if you are Chaim Bloom moving Brendan Donovan, I think you are looking for an arm that's got swing and miss, and preferably one that is probably closer to the big leagues, because I think they have some questions of how good their depth really is behind their top 5 or 6 arms here in the system right now. So I think that's what they're targeting. But if they can't find someone that's got really good swing and miss that they think maybe right now is someone that is projected as like a 3, that maybe if you fiddle with the knobs a little bit can raise the ceiling a little bit if you're here in St. Louis, then to me you have to shoot for that kind of guy. So if that means no one is offering up someone that is close to the big leagues, that is at that AAA level or is major league ready, then to me, you have to shoot lower into the minor leagues and shoot more for the upside. They have got to get someone that's got really good swing and miss and has got the ceiling of like a 2 or a 3, in my opinion. That is what the main headline of the return for Brendan Donovan should be. And I think they can get that for him. I had said on this podcast, I'd said it on our show, I thought Newbar was going to be the guy that they could move on and do like the Jonathan India trade that the Royals pulled off last offseason, which was India, high on base guy for Brady Singer, who's like a solid number 3 arm. Newbar's now had surgery on both of his feet, as we talked about in the last episode. He's no longer going to be able to get you that kind of return. Donovan can. Donovan can still be the guy that ends up getting you a really good upside play for your rotation. It's just a matter of, is he going to be more in the lower minor leagues or is he going to be closer? Their target should be closer, but if you can't find someone that's got the upside that you really like, then you need to go down lower to the minor leagues and still shoot for an upside play that's got swing and miss stuff.
So the comparison that I made for this trade earlier today on our show, we don't have to get into like all of the permutations that it took, but back in, I think it was 2018, that offseason, the Cardinals were in the market for an outfielder, and they were looking in 2 different directions. It was either free agency or trade. Free agency opportunity was Dexter Fowler. Trade was Adam Eaton of, at the time, the Chicago White Sox. The Cardinals got spooked by the trade capital that was going to have to be put up for Adam Eaton, because the Washington Nationals ultimately got him, and they had to trade Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, and Dane Dunning in order to trade for Adam Eaton at the time. That was just too much for the Cardinals to stomach, so they decided to go the Dexter Fowler route. I bring that up because he had a lot of similarities to what Brendan Donovan brings to the table. Adam Eaton and Brendan Donovan, very similar styles of players. Eaton had a little more cost control to him, so I wouldn't expect that size of a return in terms of the quantity of players, but the quality of the top player that came in return for Adam Eaton, maybe you could get something similar, where Lucas Giolito was the prized prospect that was sent to the White Sox. I think the Cardinals should be hoping to get something similar to that. Maybe not to the same level, because honestly, prospects just don't get traded the way that they once did in Major League Baseball. But something similar to that is what I would be looking for. And I think that pitcher might be Noah Cameron from the Kansas City Royals. Now, he has already pitched and succeeded at the Major League level. So there was a slight difference there, whereas at the time, Lucas Giolito was still in AAA.
Yeah.
We had not seen him have success at the Major League level yet. Noah Cameron is a guy who last season had a sub-3 ERA in 140 Major League innings. I know he's a good Major League starter. Now, what is the upside here? I don't think his future is as a sub-3 ERA starter. I don't think he is one of the 10 best pitchers, which is basically the quality of starter that he was last year. I think he's more of a 3 and a good rotation Major League wise. And here's why I think that would be a really good return for the Cardinals. I think this is an offseason where they can walk and chew gum at the same time. They can go make this trade for a mid-rotation starter. You've got Liam Doyle, who you hope eventually becomes somebody that is a close to front end of the rotation starter. And then there's something kind of bubbling under the surface, T-Bone, that I find to be really interesting right now. And it is their potential involvement in the free agency market. So this is going to get a little convoluted, and I apologize. The qualifying offer. What is it, BK? Why does it matter? Why should I care about that? Well, the Cardinals didn't qualifying offer anybody this offseason. Basically, the way that works is if you're an NHL fan, it's restricted free agency, more or less. You get to offer somebody the right of first refusal. So it's a $22 million 1-year guaranteed deal. And the player, after you basically tag them with it, it's almost like a franchise tag. After you tag them with it, they have the right to either accept or decline. If they decide to decline that qualifying offer, which would give them a 1-year, $22 million deal, they're still a free agent, but they're attached to that, which means the team that offered them that qualifying offer. So like if the Cardinals decided to do this for, they won't, I promise, Miles Michaelis.
Luckily, the deadline's passed.
And somehow he declined that qualifying offer. And then he went and signed elsewhere. Well, the Cardinals get a draft pick for him going to sign elsewhere. Meanwhile, that team that signs him has to give up a draft pick. And every team is a little different. There's a formula that goes into it. And that won't be ultimately determined for another 3 weeks in Major League Baseball. Why is that the case? I don't know, bro. I got nothing for you. Feel like at the beginning of the offseason, they should have that ready to go, but it is what it is. So on December 2nd, we will find out, were the Cardinals, as they traditionally have been, a team that neither paid nor received revenue share? That's the teams in the middle. That's typically where the Cardinals fall. And if that's where they are again this year, if they were to sign a player that is attached to a qualifying offer, they will have to give up their second round pick and $500,000 in international signing bonus money. That's bad. You don't want to do that at this point in your life cycle as an organization. But here's where it gets interesting, T-Bone. If the Cardinals this year received revenue sharing, which might be the case for the first time in God only knows how long because of how few fans showed up this year compared to a normal season. If they received revenue sharing this year, they would only have to give up their third highest draft pick. No international signing bonus, not your second round pick, just your third round pick to sign a qualifying offer tagged, basically, player. So that's where you get to Framber Valdez. Dylan Cease is the name that I personally would throw in here. If you personally prefer somebody like Zach Gallen, whoever the pitcher is that's been qualifying offered, you could go sign that player, and all you'd, in this scenario, have to give up is a third-round draft pick. All right, the reason I bring that up as it pertained to our conversation about walking and chewing gum at the same time for the Cardinals this offseason. If they were a revenue-sharing team, this is an offseason where I would trade Brendan Donovan for a pitcher like Noah Cameron who can be a mid-rotation starter, and then I would go sign Dylan Cease. And that way, moving forward, your rotation at the top would be Dylan Cease 1, Liam Doyle 2, Noah Cameron or somebody similar to him 3, and then you fill it out with either homegrown players, so Michael McGreevy, Andre Palante,
Leahy,
whoever it may be. You can fill it out from there, and you've got the backlog coming from your minor league system, or you're developing a bunch of guys right now. Quinn Matthews coming through your system. They've got others down at AA that they really like. That looks like a legit major league rotation now. It just requires that front end part of it where they're now a revenue sharing recipient. That changes everything about their offseason. So that is a long-winded way to explain why I think Noah Cameron makes a lot of sense for the Cardinals if they received revenue sharing. If they did not, and they're unwilling to spend $100 million on a starter, then you got to aim for the upside.
Yeah, I would still be aiming for the upside because even if it is a third-round pick, I don't know that I'm signing a starter this offseason and losing it. I don't know that I want to lose a top 100-ish pick that would be for the St. Louis Cardinals because there can still be pretty good players that are drafted in the third round. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that it's super easy to find them. Right?
Certainly not a Dylan Cease caliber of player.
That's fair. But my concern with the Cardinals is you sign Cease to what, 5-year deal, we'll say?
6 probably, yeah.
5 or 6. You get him maybe the final 2 or 3 years, depending on how long it is when you're in that competitive window. And I don't know how much I really believe. Cease is a good number 2 arm, and then you're really putting the pressure on Doyle to be there. But the reason I bring that up is I think right now where they are in their life cycle, it makes more sense to have the top 100 pick to build through your minor league system. Like I just went through the last kind of 2021, 2022 MLB drafts to give some time for these prospects to build. Now, this will add against me because that is 3 years of taking time for these guys to kind of become what they are. But you look back on some of the guys that have been selected in that third round. Ben Joyce with the LA Angels has been a guy that was been selected. Fire breathing. He's more of a reliever now. Bullpen arm. You've got Drake Baldwin, who I believe just won Rookie of the Year as a catcher for the Atlanta Braves. 2021, you had Mason Miller that got selected by the Oakland Athletics. They thought he was going to be a starter. He's transitioned to bullpen. Maybe now he's back to being a starter for the Padres. We'll see what it holds. But so those are a couple of names that we're talking about in this stretch.
My follow-up to that, though, and this is why I think you'd be willing to give that up. If I went through the first round of a draft, you're looking at like a 50% hit rate. 50% of those guys go on to become good major leaguers. In that third round that you were just talking about, you went through a 2-year stretch. You brought up 3 names. The fact that you can only bring up like 3 or 4 names over a 2-year stretch of high-level players that came out of the third round, and 2 of them are relievers, I think speaks to how unlikely it is for third rounders to become significant contributors at the big league level. And so if I have let's call it a 20% chance of a guy even becoming a contributor at this level, and maybe a 5% chance of them being a difference maker at this level, or I can guarantee I have a difference maker at this level by going and signing somebody like a Dylan Cease, the calculus to me weighs more heavily in favor of the free agent that's attached to the qualifying offer. Now, I think it's slightly different in the second round Because at that point, you're talking about a top 35 player in the draft. There's also some money situations there where you can go under slot in the first round, over slot in the second round, and that becomes a whole different conversation that I won't spend the time with because we just explained the qualifying offer. But you can play the games a little bit more with that second round pick. The third rounder is where I kind of think you start getting into we're playing craps here. I don't know how likely it is that you're actually getting a significant contributor once you get there.
Yeah, I agree. If it's a second round pick and you're $500,000 international, but no way are you signing anybody. I still am taking the shot on the third round pick. I'm holding on to it and hoping that you can end up with something there. Because I just don't know that you're in the life cycle to be spending the money on Dylan Cease right now. And that's why, like, to me, like you mentioned Noah Cameron, for example, as the guy that maybe the Cardinals could target if they were to do a trade of Donovan to the Kansas City Royals. I just don't know if there's enough upside in the Cameron that I would want him in that return as the headline. If that means what I talked about earlier, where it is, well, hey, we're not willing to if you don't want Cameron, then we're going to be giving you a high upside arm that's in low A. I'll take that. I'll take the high upside arm because for me, Cameron doesn't have enough swing and miss. It does feel more of like a house of cards of what he did last season. And that's not to say he can't develop to become a good player. He could settle in as being a number 4 starter. And I'm not trying to downplay what those mean for organizations. But the Cardinals are in the business of, with a Donovan trade, they need to really hit on this and bring in a guy that can be top 3 in their rotation, that has that upside, that has the swing and miss stuff. And I just don't know that Cameron is that guy that they should be targeting in that return. That's why, for me, what they should be targeting, high upside play with Brendan Donovan. Hope is that he's close to the big leagues, probably has a chance to be in your rotation, and then a 1-year deal, pillow deal for like a Bueller, Dustin May, we've talked about a lot, that they can bring into this rotation in free agency.
What I struggle with, though, is are teams going to give you that?
I think someone will for Donovan, especially because, I mean, you mentioned it, there's 15, 20 teams that are probably willing to do it for Brendan Donovan, and he can fill different spots on their roster. He can be your second baseman if you're looking for a second baseman. He could be your third baseman if you're looking for a third baseman. He could be your corner outfielder if you're looking for that. And the part that's so valuable for him is, one, he can go to any market, as we talked about earlier, because of the price tag. 2, if you have a prospect that you're looking at going, okay, yeah, we want a corner outfielder to help us this year, but maybe we have a prospect that we think's there. Well, we don't want to block him. Well, the nice part about Brendan Donovan is he's got versatility. He can play at another position. He can be a guy that can also be traded again if you decide, hey, you know what, we had him for a year. Now we don't have a spot on him for our roster. Somebody else will take him off our hands. Somebody will give up, I think, a high upside arm that's got swing and miss stuff.
When you say high upside, are you like top 50 prospects?
I don't think they're going that high for him. I think it's a potential fringe top 100 prospect to get him.
Because the guys that are like fringe top 100 prospects, I mean, that's what you look in the Cardinal system, just as an example, that's what Tink Hence was. And we've seen what that means for a guy like Tink Hence. And this is the risk. Like, with the reward, the potential payoff down the road of, hey, he becomes a superstar for you. He's a number 1 starter. We also have to acknowledge the risk of he never becomes a pitcher for you. And that's why I struggle with the balancing act there. And Noah Cameron, I'm just using here as an example, because I think Quinn Priester, we spent so much time this year talking about what he meant for the Brewers, right? And he became such an important addition. He was a very good starter for them. I think Noah Cameron has a lot of similarities in his profile to what Quinn Priester was for the Brewers. Cameron is 26 years old. He had a 2.9 ERA this season. It's not crazy good strikeout numbers, but he does have an elite pitch. His breaking ball is an elite pitch that teams, I think, can build a repertoire around, and we'll see how that develops over time, because in the minor leagues, he did have good swing and miss stuff. Like, you look at his minor league numbers, it's like 11 or 12 strikeouts per 9 innings when he was down at the minor league level. That's what you're looking for. It just hasn't quite translated after one season at the big league level to the same extent. If I have somebody that I can lock into my rotation next year, Noah Cameron, and has 5 more years of club control, and I think he's got, number 3 starter written all over him at the major league level, it's hard for me to turn that down in favor of a maybe. And I guess that's where I struggle with it, is like certainty versus a maybe. Even with a higher upside on that maybe, I think you kind of need to go with the certainty here, because you do have at least a high upside play in Liam Doyle already coming through your system.
Yeah, and see, I'm looking for another one that could be in that conversation of the Liam Doyle.
That's where I would sign somebody. Like, whether it's Dylan Cease this offseason or in the future, I would like kind of slot that as my signing. Because I've got Doyle as my 2 in this scenario, Cameron as my 3. He's homegrown, he's cheap, cost controlled, and then I continue to develop the guys for 4 and 5, and those guys are a dime a dozen. You can continue to develop them. That number 1 starter is where you can spend your money. That's where you go to the market to find somebody, or you trade for a guy that becomes available later on.
Yeah, and I think you do that when you're ready to compete, and I don't know that they're there yet, and that's why
I agree. That's what I'm saying, is in the future. I'm not talking about this for 2026. I would do it for Cease because he can be here long term and he's young, but in the future.
I agree. Long term, yes. When you get to that point, yeah, you will have to probably go out there and sign somebody. I'm not denying that. But I think right now, like, the reason I look at Cameron is because, I mean, you mentioned it and said, hey, look, he's like a 4, maybe you can write him, maybe 3, depending on how you view him. Like, I say at minimum, you need someone that you can look at and say, if they are a certainty, you're saying, okay, 3 or higher when you acquire them. And if you're looking at upside, you're saying, okay, probably 2 or higher, maybe 3 is like worst case scenario. And this is where we just differ. I don't view Cameron as a guy that is a 3, but that is the kind of profile.
How many teams have a better pitcher than that as their 3?
I mean, without digging through it, it would be hard to say, but like a guy like fought 2 years ago, I would have said like that's a good number 3. Now he didn't work.
He's no better than
he didn't work.
Noah
That's what
Cameron.
I'm saying. But I would have saw the stuff and saw what he was doing and going, okay, he has swing and miss stuff. The stuff looks disgusting. I think the Dodgers have a couple of interesting arms that you look at, that like a Pepiot, who is a guy that they have that's in their rotation. Well,
Dodgers are an outlier
in a version of his rotation that I think's got better stuff that I look at. But like
when I watched the playoffs this year, the reason I asked the question, every team wanted to upgrade over its number 3 or 4 starter, seemingly. So if all of these other teams are doing that, I feel like we're trying to create this hypothetical rotation that basically only the Dodgers have. And I don't think that it's realistic to be able to do that. I mean, maybe the Mariners. The Mariners have maybe created that.
I think Phillies, to an extent, felt comfortable with their 3.
If they were fully healthy, maybe. But when Zach Wheeler goes down, it ceased to be that.
Even then, though, I think they felt fairly good. I think they felt pretty good about. I'm trying to think. It was Luzardo, I think, was their 3. He had like good swing. Like that's what I'm looking for.
That much better than Noah Cameron?
I think so. He's got better swing and miss stuff. And I think when you're talking about a 3, yes, odds are you will look at your 3 starter and go, there's a year where you probably want to upgrade from him. But a number 3 starter is a guy that can carry a team for about a month when he gets hot. And that's what I think about. That's what Fott did in the playoffs. That's why I mentioned his name. Because, yes, he has not lived up to that since that run. But he was good enough to help carry the Diamondbacks to the World Series with a number 1 and number 2 in Kelly and Gallen. And then he was there as that third guy that got hot at the right time. A number 3 starter is a guy that can pitch well for probably 2 of 6 months. But the reason he's able to do that is because he has swing and miss stuff.
How do you view Michael Wacha?
I would say he's that guy. He's a number 3, but I think his swing and miss has come down.
Yeah, I would view Michael Wacha in the same light as Noah Cameron. I think Noah Cameron last year, for example, was a better pitcher than Michael Wacha. And so I guess that's where our disconnect is coming in here. And ultimately, this has become like a Noah Cameron conversation. The point here is to use him as insert player X here. Cameron can be the guy that is like, this is what a mid-rotation starter looks like. How do you feel about that being the return for Brendan Donovan is ultimately my question here that I wanted to explore. And I think we've explored it, and you'd be disappointed by that. As the headliner coming in return for Brendan Donovan, I would think that's a pretty damn good return. And so I'm curious to see what the Cardinals decide to do with it, because I think these are going to be the conversations they have to have internally. They're going to have a lot of offers on the table, man. And they're going to have to go through them and find out, all right, what's the best way for us to approach this? And how does it fit within the puzzle that is not only the 2026 offseason, which is what we're so focused on right now, but also the 2027 trade deadline, or the 2026 trade deadline, and then the 2027 offseason, and what ultimately is the 2027/2028 roster when we're hoping to get good again. Because I think that's what they're going to have in their mind is, how do we get back to that legit threat in the National League 2 to 3 years from now? And I think Cameron can be a part of that. I think he probably would be a good way to get back to that contention level. But I understand the alternative view, and I like that you were able to present that there. I also want to talk to you a little bit about how you view this upcoming season, because I think that's going to be a big question on the hearts and the minds of a lot of Cardinals fans as we go into the offseason. What are they trying to accomplish here? What are we trying to work toward in 2026? We'll discuss that coming up on the other side here on the Redbird Report. Okay, so one of the big questions that the Cardinals are going to have to answer this offseason, and it should be the North Star for what they decide to do. What's our plan for 2026? What are we trying to accomplish here? Are we trying to compete? Are we hoping to maybe sneak into the playoffs? Is this just a lost year and it's all runway 2.0? Are we actually actively trying to lose? There's a bunch of different paths that you can take as an organization, but I think as fans especially, it helps us understand the offseason when we know what the goals are for 2026. And I think most years we kind of have an idea of what the Cardinals are trying to do. They're trying to get to 90 wins, get to 3 million fans, and ultimately get into the playoffs, see what happens there. For the first time, I don't know what the answer to that question is. And so for you, when you hear that, T-Bone, what is your answer? What's their approach? What's their plan for 2026?
I think they don't want to just tear this down to the studs and become a 70-win team, 75-win team, almost where they were last year, but worse. But I also don't know that they're trying to completely get really good and win the NL Central within 1 year under Chaim Bloom. Would it be weird if I think kind of what the year would be almost defined by this upcoming season is about getting your feet wet. And what I mean by that is with J.J. Weatherholt. J.J. Weatherholt is a guy that if you believe he's going to be a star, I think they seem to think he could become that guy. He's not going to do it like that. Bobby Witt didn't even do it like that in his first year with the Kansas City Royals. I think it is about, hey, learn what it's like to be a big leaguer. Learn from an Alec Burleson if he is still here. Ivan Herrera, that guy can hit. I would watch what he does in the cage and see what you can learn from him. Work with our hitting coach and Brant Brown. Liam Doyle could potentially fall into this as well. If there is a high upside arm, whether it is Cameron, although he had a full year, but maybe it is an arm that was like the Giolito type, where he was at AAA, is ready to burst onto the scene in your Donovan trade that you acquire. Hey, learn what it's like to be a big leaguer. You're going to start. You're going to start every fifth day, but learn what that's like. So I think it's about getting your feet wet, and I think your hope if you're the Cardinals is you're about a 500 team. I think that's what you're kind of trying to build for, because I don't think they want to be super bad. I think they want to see if they can try and find a way to pull in some interest from Cardinals fans and see if they can boost attendance a little bit, not a lot to where it had been. And you kind of hope you become the Reds for this year. And I know that sounds weird. I know it's the Reds. I watched them in the playoffs. They were non-competitive against the Dodgers. I get it. But you look at the Reds. What do they have? They have an Elly De La Cruz that you could hope hey, could J.J. Weatherholt be 9% above league average next year? Guess what? That's what Elly De La Cruz was for the Cincinnati Reds. Now, he goes about it in a different way than what Weatherholt will. You look at their rotation. Hey, they've got the Brady Singer type arm that's a number 3 starter. Andrew Abbott was really good for them. They have Hunter Green, who's a high upside arm. Maybe Doyle doesn't become that guy in year one, and he may not even start here until we get to, post-trade deadline. But you hope you start to see some of those pieces and that you remain somewhat competitive in this, and you almost are trying to do what the Blues did, which is kind of retool on the fly while also remaining competitive, and hope that if some of these pieces click together, you're a playoff team, not because you were a 90-win club, but because he did what the Reds did and you won 83 games and you kind of tried.
So runway 2.0.
That's the funny. I don't know if it is about kind of, but I don't know if it really would define the season as much, because last year there was a lot of pieces they needed answers on. And I don't know if this year you necessarily need answers on really anybody, if that makes sense.
It's not as urgent?
Yeah, that would be the word I would use. It's not urgent. You had to know, okay, can Nootbaar be healthy and put it together for us? Is Nolan Gorman going to be able to hit the 35 home runs that we think he's got the potential of? Mason Wynn, okay, what is he as an everyday shortstop? Matthew Liberatore, can he start? Because we're running out of time because he's hitting arbitration. I don't know if there's anybody I look at there and say there's urgency, because like I said, it'd be more about getting your feet wet for a J.J. Weatherholt than anything.
Palante would be urgency.
And I feel like they kind of know what he is.
I think so too. Other guys that would fit into that criteria, I guess Burleson, but I think I know.
Yeah, I
don't
agree.
feel urgency there. I think it's maybe just Jordan Walker. And then Ivan Herrera is a catcher. Yeah. I don't have urgency to find out what Ivan Herrera is as a player. I think I know what he is as a hitter. But on the defensive side of things, what is your future position is really the last question that exists for him. So that would play into these conversations as well. But beyond that, it's kind of roles in the bullpen. And then I think it would be the year of the debut. Like that's what I would classify it as, is you hope to see Liam Doyle at some point. JJ Weatherholt should make his major league debut early next season. Quinn Matthews, you expect to be up with
Bryson
the rotation.
Bonds, maybe.
Exactly. So you're having these guys that we've heard about for at least a couple of years now, and you expect to see them. It's debut season, really, for the Cardinals in 2026. And then 2027, you hope they make good on the promise that they had while they were coming through your minor league system.
Yeah, it would be the year of the debut, getting your feet wet, or honestly, the debut of your new core. I mean, that's what it would be for the St. Louis Cardinals, because Doyle's supposed to be, if he's not a 1, a number 2 for you in that rotation, hopefully.
They need him to be. Yep.
Exactly. JJ Weatherholt, minimum a guy that can hit like somewhere 1 through 5 through your lineup, and ideally you hope he becomes a 3-4 hitter for you. Quinn Matthews, guy that hopefully is a top 3 starter in your rotation. Bryson Motts, who knows? I mean, I don't know what his upside truly is, but again, a guy that can be in the rotation for the St. Louis Cardinals. And then, like you said, the only guy that it does have urgency to me would be Jordan Walker.
How many players do you think are already a part of, you mentioned the core. How many current players do you think are already part of the core, are locked in?
I would say, so the 2 that I think are currently on the roster, like on the 26-man, Ivan Herrera, Alec Burleson. I would say that's 2.
Mason?
I don't know yet. I think it'd be fair to put him on there. I personally wouldn't just yet, but I could get if you did. He's like right on the fringe. And then I think it is Doyle, JJ Weatherholt, and then I think Quinn Matthews is close as well as potential. I think that I would only have 4 right now as part of the core moving forward.
So you've got your first base / outfielder, catcher / first base / outfielder / DH.
Yeah.
We don't have a position for either of our 2 core pieces.
They hit. It's fine.
I don't know where JJ Weatherholt's future position is either. I think he's going to be good wherever he is.
I would say infield.
Second, short, third, somewhere there, and he'll be good wherever he is. And then 2 pitchers, potentially, probably 1 right now that you feel good about with Liam Doyle, who we've never seen pitch at the big league level.
Yeah.
I think that's probably right. I'm really curious to see what their decision is on Burley this offseason, because it sure seems like he's the guy you're not hearing the rumors about.
Yeah.
And if I had told you at this point last offseason, we're going to get to the end of the 2025 season, and the one left-handed bat that they will not be listening to offers on is Alec Burleson, we would have both been like, what
the hell happened last year?
Why? I don't think he has defensive value. He's not athletic. He hits for average, but he doesn't hit for a whole lot of power. And even the average is like, he's good in the first half and then terrible in the second half. How could that end up happening? But what we saw this season is he's perfect capable defensively. He's a fine outfielder. Not good, but fine. You can do it if you need him to. I think he's a pretty good first baseman if you need to put him there. And then as a hitter, like, dude, if that guy's your 5-hole hitter, you're a pretty good team.
Yeah.
And if he's batting second or third for you, you can win as long as you've got guys that are supplementing around him. So I think Burleson has worked himself into that conversation. I got no questions with Ivan Herrera as a hitter. That guy's a stud. You want him here. He's the only real right-handed option that you have as well.
Yeah.
And then you think about like Liam Doyle, JJ Weatherholt, those guys are your first-round pick, top 10 picks over the last 2 years. You got to have them in the conversation as well. But it's kind of wild that Burleson has kind of nudged his way into this conversation as being a core member of your roster. And I haven't heard anything so far about the Cardinals listening to offers. There's stuff about people being interested in him, which, yeah, of course, he's good. I haven't heard much of the Cardinals actually legitimizing those offers yet.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, he falls into what they are trying to do. And the other thing, like, I mean, we just talked about, like, this upcoming season could be the year of the debut of the core, the next core of the Cardinals. It's also the theme of the offseason, is trying to find more to add to it, because you're right, there is only one pitcher in there. Of all those guys that I mentioned in the position player side of that core, I don't know how many are legitimate middle-of-the-order boppers. As much as people want Weatherholt to be it, I'm kind of skeptical he's going to be that. I think he's going to be a very good player. I don't know if he's that 3-4, 30 homer, 100 RBI guy. You know, and I consider that is just traditional stats. There's nothing sexy about like it's an OPS or what his hard hit rate is.
It's
I care
also
about
what
30
every
homers.
good team in Major League Baseball has in their middle of the order. So.
And I don't know that he's going to be that guy. But again, I do think he's going to be a good player. I don't think Burleson's that guy. Herrera, we'll see. He only played, 105 games last year, so you got to see
He's your hope.
He's the hope, but you need two. I think you need two of those guys to where then Burley's not being asked to do more, or Weatherholt if he doesn't become that. And that's why this feels like the I'll say it's the offseason, and I know it's not part of this offseason, but I'm going to mold it into the draft as well next year, because you are going to end up with a high pick, potential with the lottery to even end up with the number one. But, you've got that opportunity there. Whoever you acquire for Donovan, whoever you draft with this high first-round pick that you've got coming up, adds to this core. And as we've seen with William Doyle, who we're talking about as their last first-round pick, Weatherholt 2 years ago is their first-round pick. That first-round pick this year could be here within 2 years, or maybe even a year and a half, honestly. This is the offseason / draft that is going to add to this core to where they should be able to say, okay, we think we got another pitcher from Brendan Donovan trade to be with Liam Doyle. Maybe Matthews does work his way up to that. And then maybe we draft a bopper that can come into this lineup and help Weatherholt, Burleson, and Herrera. And boom, just like that, if you're a believer like you and say, hey, it shouldn't take 3 years to build this thing back up to being competitive. Not World Series contender, but competitive. There is the path to how you got there if you are Chaim Bloom.
Another scenario, you go out, you sign Dylan Cease via free agency because you only had to give up the third-round draft pick. Then you trade Fernando Tatis Jr. and you trade Brendan Donovan for Noah Cameron. Now we're cooking with gas, baby. We're good.
If this was a AJ Preller, Dave Dombrowski style offseason, that's how he would do it.
The Cardinals probably won't.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking we were going more of what I kind of said there.
Yeah, I do think they could end up trading for a Noah Cameron. I think that would make a lot of sense for what they're looking for this offseason. And then maybe they make another move for an upside play from the lower levels where maybe it's not quite as high of a pedigree prospect.
We haven't brought it up. Maybe that's what you do with the catching position.
Sure.
Right? They're being rumored to be listening on catchers. And if you're going to say, hey, where's a catcher? Okay, well, now I have Pages, Jimmy Crooks, Leonardo Bernal, and if you're really thinking aggressive, Rodriguez potentially has a swing as well. He might be a guy that they're considering as the core moving forward in a couple of years, but they've got catchers that you could trade for an upside, do a prospect for prospect swap, and you shoot for one of those upside guys you're talking about.
Decisions galore. We've got a lot of decisions to make this offseason. Do Chaim Bloom and the St. Louis Cardinals. We'll be breaking it all down when we return here in a couple of weeks here on the Redbird Report. Appreciate you guys tuning in as always. If you guys are looking for any more on the Cardinals, especially throughout the offseason, we have our show, BK and Ferrario, live weekdays from 11 to 2 on 101 ESPN, so be sure to stay tuned for that as well. For Tanner Hendrickson and Zane, who does a fantastic job for us on the video side of things, I'm Brandon Kiley. We will talk to you guys in a couple of weeks here on the Redbird Report.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.